We're learning about transforming formulas. No, not transformers. Transforming formulas. It's kind of the same thing, isn't it? These guys are just changing into either machines or some type of car or whatever else. We're just going to change around a formula. So transforming formulas is to change a formula to solve for a specific variable using inverse operations. All right, if you need more time, pause the video. And here for an example on that. Example 1, the area of a rectangle is the length times the width. Solve for the length. All right, well, I don't see any numbers here, so don't get all freaked out on me. We're still going to use the exact same rules as we do with any equation. So inverse operations using PEMDAS in reverse. So area I'm going to let represent A. So I need a letter for each of these unknowns. The length is going to be L. I'm going to use a cursive L so it's not to be mistaken by a 1. And then width, I'm going to use a W. And I know the word is means what? Equals. So is equals. So really this is just going to be area is, so area equals length times width. And it's understood, even if you don't put that dot, that it means multiply. All right, now I want to solve for my length. So I'm going to circle the length. That just reminds me that that's what I'm trying to isolate. And then what's the inverse of multiplying it by W? Dividing it by W. So you're still doing the exact same steps except you don't have numbers to deal with. So the W's cancel because W divided by W is 1. And then I'm going to rewrite this so it's a little neater. So the length equals the area divided by the width. So even though we don't have any numbers, just ask yourself, did we solve for the letter that we wanted to solve for? Yes. So that means you're done. So did you get the length by itself? Yes. All right. Okay, if we were using numbers, this same equation could look something like this. 40 equals 5 times the length. Well, just to remind you, we're doing the same thing. So here my width is 5, so I divide by 5. So that's just a one-step equation. And my length would equal 8. So we're using the same rules. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So look at your other example. We divided by W, divided by W. Here I divided by 5, divided by 5. So you're using the same exact rules as you do with numbers, only you just have letters. Hopefully that helps to clear it up. Let's try example 2 now. And remember what our goal is? It's to get the letter by itself. And to do that, we're going to use PEMDAS in reverse. All right, so let's try an example using that. Okay, example 2, I equals PRT. This is our interest formula. We're principal and rate and time. And let's say that we want to solve for P. So if that's given you to solve for P, then we want to circle the P. So I'm going to start off by circling the P. And that reminds me that we're trying to get P all by itself. So R and T, you guessed it, they're going to get the boot. So let's give R and T the boot so P can be all by itself. So how do we do that? Well, what does it mean when you have a number next to a letter or a letter next to a letter? If you said multiply, you're right. So we're multiplying. It's understood that we're multiplying these all together. So what's the inverse of multiplying? Dividing. So if we divide by R and divide by T, and we do that to both sides of our equation, then the r's are going to cancel because r divided by r is 1 and t divided by t is 1. So they cancel, and then p is all by its lonesome, which is what we want to get the letter by itself. So it's just I over RT. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather write it the other way around, so I'm just going to reverse it. That's the commutative property of equality right there, where you can just switch it around. So P equals I over RT. And we're done, because P is by itself. All right. Let's try another one. Example 3. All right, example 3 is, the question is solve for W, and you're given the formula P, or the perimeter, equals 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. What's this the perimeter for? If you said a rectangle, you are correct. All right, so if I want to solve for W, I'm going to circle the W, and then I wrote my PEMDAS in reverse over here just to keep track of everything. So if I have add or subtract, I want to do it first. And it turns out I do have an adding 2L, so the inverse of that's a minus 2L, because 2L minus 2L is nothing. Whatever you do to one side, do to the other. So our 2L's become nothing, so it cancels out. And we have 2W equals P minus 2L. All right, I'm still going to circle that variable just because all these letters are confusing me, and I want to remember what I want to get by itself. So I want to get the W by itself. All right, I've already done my add and subtracts. Now I'm on multiply and divide. So I'm multiplying the W by 2. What's the inverse of that? Dividing by 2. Whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. And anytime you have more than one thing going on a fraction, you should put it in parentheses. So my final answer I'm just going to write as W equals that P minus 2L over 2. But I'm just going to write that top part in parentheses just to remind me that that whole thing is the numerator. And is W by itself? Yes. So that means we've done it. So this is our answer. It doesn't look pretty, and that may not give you the same satisfaction as it does with numbers, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Hey, what are you doing with my cookie? All right, let's do one last example. Example 4. All right, copy down example 4. 3/4 x minus y equals m. And our question reads, solve for x. Well, if I'm solving for x, then I need to circle the x, just to remind me. With all those letters, it gets confusing. So circle what you're trying to solve. And, do I have any add or subtract? Yeah, I'm subtracting the y. So the inverse is adding the y. So I'm going to do plus y to both sides, and minus y and plus y is nothing. So those are goodbye. So I've given y the boot. Whoopsh. So I bring everything else down, and I get 3/4 x equals m plus y. I'm just going to write that more neatly right there. And I'm done with my add and subtract, so now I'm on multiply and divide. Well, we have a 3/4 times the x. I'm going to circle that x again to remind me I'm trying to solve for x. So I need to get it by itself. So how do I get rid of the 3/4? Yeah, we could divide by it, but what's the quicker way we've learned? Multiply by the reciprocal. So 4/3. And we're going to do times 4/3 to the other side. And my 4's cancel. And I'm just going to bring down the x. And it's really 4/3. And if I'm multiplying that by the whole thing, the m plus y, what do you think I should do with the m plus y? keep it together in parentheses. So m plus y. All right, did we solve for the x? Is the x by itself? Yes. So again, it's not pretty, but that is our answer. We have x by itself, and we've done inverse operations. All right, that about sums it up for transforming formulas. We're going to do one on our own. I'll put the solution, and that will be all, folks. Remember, you got to use that boot. We kicked out the y, kicked out the 3/4. They got to go, because we need that letter to be all by its lonesome. And here you are. Solve for y. 2x equals w minus 2/5 y. Go ahead and pause the video and give this one a shot. And here for the solution. First step, subtract w to both sides. That becomes 2x minus w equals negative 2/5 y. Next step, multiply by the reciprocal, the negative 5/2. And then we're multiplying that to everything. So that means I'm going to keep that 2x minus w together in parentheses just to make sure the whole thing gets multiplied. Whoops. And that's my answer. Y equals negative 5/2 times 2x minus w in parentheses. Did you get that right? I hope so. All right, one last thing that I almost forgot. What do you think the inverse is of squaring something? This is your last note. What's the inverse of squaring? If you said square root, you are correct. So for example, let's say you had w squared equals a, and you wanted to solve for w. So the inverse of squaring w is the square root. Do it to both sides, and you would get w equals the square root of a. All right, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. Don't be too freaked out by all those letters. Remember to circle the letter you're looking for and get it all by itself. And somebody has to get the boot. Ow, that one had to hurt.